Thank you guys, and thank you so much for inviting me today. It's great to get out of the Edinburgh tundra. It's freezing over there. So my name is Paul Teresi, and I am with Skyscanner. My external title is a digital media executive, but internally we go by growth executive, and then more specifically a growth hacker. So for those of you guys who aren't aware of what Skyscanner is we are a travel meta search, and we compare hotels, flights, and car hire. And so we have a product where we started out online, and then we've expanded into the app space. So today I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about how we're applying growth hacking mentalities and how you guys can take these away into your day-to-day. So just to kick off, by the end of 2020, it is expected that there's going to be over 5 million active apps in the Apple Store. That's a 73% increase to the year-end projected figures from 2016. So that's creating a lot of noise into the space. And for brands like Skyscanner, and a lot like you might only have 1 or 2 apps that you're actively trying to push out there. So it involves being creative in the way that you're doing it, and using right combinations between your non-paid and your paid activity. And so that's what kind of led us to start by going from a traditional marketing standpoint and actually going forward into a growth marketing standpoint, and specifically growth hacking. And this has been a phrase all around today. So I just want to point out that when I'm talking about growth hacker today, it's a hacker whose sole objective is to grow the number of users of a specific product and make every strategic and tactical decision based on growth. And the cool thing with that is you're knocking down silos within your teams. So gone are the days for Skyscanner where you have your PR, you have your person, your country marketing, your PO. You're working together, and you're going to be very T-shaped in the way that you're thinking there. So when I say T-shaped, you're going ahead and taking all the disciplines, and you're taking out the middleman there who's going to maybe slow down your process. Now, the big thing to take away is we're unique, and you guys are all unique in your own ways. So what works for us might not work for you, but the big thing to keep in mind is also what works for your competitors, or where your competitors are being placed, doesn't necessarily mean that's the right spot for you guys to obtain your objectives today. So I'm going to talk a little bit how we're taking in the marketing commercial standpoint and the data science to kind of help eliminate the need to rely on external BI teams or internal, so you can make more optimized and informed decisions in there. And the way that we're doing this by being very lean and agile, quick, is following the simple 5-step process to help get a collective buy-in from teams. And so today I'm going to talk a little bit about the define phase as well as the learn phase. But throughout my presentation, there will be a link afterwards where you can find a lot more information that we have for you guys to share on those middle phases I'm not touching on. So to start there's a couple key insights, some that were very touched on earlier today. And to begin, you need to define your actionable goals for your experiments. And when I say actionable, sometimes that can be a term that's synonymized with realistic. And that's not always the case, because it's important to have those smart reach goals, but making sure you know exactly what you're trying to achieve at this moment. So understanding your growth funnels at this moment and making sure you're prioritizing the right things at the right moment. Additionally, defining your tracking and your analytics for this is going to be key, because you want to make sure that what you're looking at is what the person next to you is looking at, as well as looking at what you want to share with your wider team, with your leads, and the figures that are going to ultimately change and drive your strategy going forward. So the key to having those lean and agile approaches there is making sure that you are testing fast and learning even faster. And what I mean by that is making sure that you're using your resources you have available to you and not going ahead. You don't need to do those big tests anymore. Making sure you get enough to make those informed decisions and figure out how you can easily amplify, pivot, or persevere. And the key is also to limit your objectives. So what happened here at Skyscanner, in a personal example, is there are so many actions that you can optimize to on your day-to-day, especially on a paid acquisition side. So for us, for a while, we were measuring so many: login, registration, search. And at the end of the day, for us to move the funnel with one of those, we had to compromise at the other side. And we weren't able to achieve the hypergrowth that we were looking for at that moment. So what we decided to do is take a step back and think deep at basic, and thinking at our pirate metrics, which you may be familiar with, the R's. So activation, acquisition, retention, referral, and revenue. And finding out which one of those you want to move at this time. So for us, the key was we wanted to go ahead and we wanted to drive revenue. And when we said that, we made sure that this decision wasn't just a decision that was on us and our own strategy, but making sure that we're getting buy-in from wider parties and making sure that our app is capable to promote this in the way we need, making sure we have the proper analytics and the tracking on the back end of that app to make sure we can propel this growth even further. And when I say get that collective buy-in and talking about those growth hackers, making sure that we also have the right design to be lean and agile. So how we went ahead and did this to start out was we made sure we liaised very closely with our graphic designer for our team. And then we made sure that we had all of our creative, only made 3 sizes, 3 variations for just a few markets to make sure we're testing quickly on this and making sure that our messaging is accurately reflecting what we want our users to do. I'm pleased to say after we did that, we're actually able to achieve 145% ROI increase over the course of just a few months. While we weren't overall compromising our product activations there, making sure we're still getting those highly activated users. And another perk that we found with this is working with multiple partners for a very small team that we have, is making sure that we're all on the same page, all those parties are connected, can be difficult at times. So by limiting our objectives for what we wanted them to go ahead and help us succeed, allowed us to make sure we had the right mindset from them and they knew exactly what we were measuring them on and exactly what we needed to see to go ahead and pursue some of our relationships. So this really helped us kind of overall improve. Now again with that, I bring back the noise because once you have an idea what you want to move, prioritization though is going to be really hard when new product releases are coming out. It's quick announcements for Apple search ads, for instance, gave you only about 6 days to have turnaround for that. Or going ahead new technology, or even with your current partners who have a beta, but you need to be on that list tomorrow. So making sure that you have proper prioritization for all these experiments is key. I'm a 3-person team in our paid acquisition side of things at Skyscanner. And so we rely heavily on the ICE score calculator. And this is a great tool that you guys can take in for multiple purposes. Whether you're trying to prioritize your own experiment backlog, you're working in a team, or you want to just make sure that you can show your stakeholders what you're working at and why it's actually doing it for you. And it seems real simple in theory when you look at it. And there is going to be links to this afterwards so you can follow through. But you look at 3 key things. Your impact. What is the impact that me doing this is going to drive? Your confidence that it will succeed. And lastly, the ease of implementation. This is a decision that you need to work with your team, but sometimes you have to think about, is it worth spending months on something to get a launch that you think is going to have really high impact? Or do you do the little things this week? Maybe you're low on resource because it's summer season and your team's on holiday for the most part. And so making sure you get those quick wins for you. So this is a really simple tool to help you get a collective buy-in and making sure that you guys are all on the same mission and all have the same vision to win. Now, once you go ahead and do that, it really helps you define your hypothesis, but that means nothing to you if you don't know what you're looking for at the end. And at the end of the day, you want to see what is the significance of what you're doing. So I mentioned one of our key things looking at for us is revenue at the moment. And so we want to make sure that, yes, we're hitting our revenue goals today, but what does that mean further down the line? What does revenue now mean in 180 days? So for us, we've been big adapters of a causal impact analysis and making sure we're looking at the widespread of what is happening from day 1, from day -30 from before you started that test, to what's going to happen afterwards. So another example of how we're doing this, and a big topic today, was Apple search ads. So for us, we knew that this is a space we really wanted to be active in. But the thing is if you look at it before, you had 2 organic listings. But now with the new ads in those markets that it has it in, you kind of lose that second listing there. So we're ranked really highly in some keywords, but in some we're still improving. And so that means that we're losing organic visibility. So what is the actual end impact we would have for Apple search ads? So what we decided to do was look at causal impact. And we looked in this graph. When I first looked at causal impact analysis, I had no idea how to interpret these graphs. But then when you kind of see it, you get to see the interesting trends. So when we begin in the graph, you can start seeing before those were introduced. And as it gets wider down the way where the hashed line is, you can start seeing where this was introduced. And when you start looking at when the dotted lines in the blue signify what's expected to happen from your historical data, the solid line is showing what's actually happened. And if it goes outside, there is significance in that. So what this was telling us is we were getting those paid installs over there, but we need to be aware of what we're compromising in our organic side of things. And so this allowed us to really draft our strategy and define it and execute further. And then with that, we're really able to use that data to know when to pivot, when to ramp up, and when to persevere. They're simple questions, but they really help you define your standpoint so you can go back quickly. So by being lean and agile, you're able to make those decisions in moment, mid-test, instead of finding out you exhausted your resource for that quarter maybe. And the last thing, my favorite value about Skyscanner is we embrace failure, because failure is not a bad thing. It's a learning opportunity, a way for you to kind of sit back and say what went wrong, but what can you do again? So a couple points I just kind of want to highlight in closing is limit your objectives and prioritize your tests today to meet those needs. Because again, I mentioned it, your competitors might be active in a space, they might be trying something new, but is that what you guys really should be prioritizing your time on at the moment? And also, look for the significance in your results. Really, what is it telling you, and how can you interpret that to make those decisions, whether you're using your analytics, attribution platforms, pivoting there, and what did this tell you about your hypothesis? And did you actually go ahead and verify it, deny it, and why? And lastly, share your results. Because for us at Skyscanner, it's really key to make sure that other people might run a similar test, and we kind of share how we learn from that. This is a quote that I found that I think is really important and relevant to a lot of things that kind of were talked about today. And it's to take a risk and keep testing. Because what works today won't work tomorrow, but what worked yesterday may work again. And I think this is really key. And it's I asked you guys to take some time and kind of reflect on this, because you might find that what other people have done might have just been that little piece that you needed to do in your experiment to pivot, and then you can pick up and try to find your growth going forward. So I want to go ahead and thank you guys for your time today. If you want to find more resources or see my slides, I highly suggest just taking a quick picture of that shortened link there. There's a lot of other great resources on there. And I would love to hear about how you guys are testing and experimenting, and maybe your fail forwards or how you guys are amplifying it. So thank you.